That was beautiful. I welcome you guys today, and hopefully you are awake and ready to go. As always, I love diving into Luke, and we've been going through the book of Luke that Nick has taken us through, and it's been a journey as always, and it's hard to believe it's we've been going for this long, for a very long time here, over a year. So hopefully we get done with it before 2 years is up. But it's been great. So I hope, as always, I like to make that little statement that you guys continue to be encouraged by going through the book of Luke at this pace and pulling out all the nuggets that are so rich for us. Our text, if you want to keep your thumb where we're going to be at today, is in Luke 17. We're starting in verse 11. And we'll be starting there in that text here today. But I always want to start a question off. And you've heard the phrase before. Has anybody ever taught you some manners? Has anybody ever told you that? Hopefully nobody's ever told you that, because that obviously means that you don't have any manners. And usually, who do you learn your manners from, right? Your parents, right? I heard somebody say, you have your parents to thank for the manners that you've learned, right? Hopefully. They're good manners. I had my dad to thank for teaching me my manners growing up, because his mom kind of enforced it on him to teach to us. So anytime we came around to my grandmother's house, she was a snowbird. She lived in my grandma and grandfather lived in Massachusetts, but they would come down to a place called Lakeland, Florida, in the middle of the state of Florida. And so we would it was just a little trip to go see them for Thanksgiving, for some other things. But anytime we ever came around, we would have a big, nice dinner, fancy dinner. And, man, we were crazy. Me and my brothers, we were just, as I look back, we were a little wild. And I remember, my grandmother getting on to us for, the typicals. I had no idea that putting your elbows on the table was not okay. So we would just be ready to eat and just, let's eat. And my grandma would, do this thing where she'd either nudge us or knock, she would give my dad a look, and then he would, knock our elbows off the table and we'd fall. And my grandfather, if we ever reached across the table for something, he would stab us with his fork. And so enough times we got stabbed that we started, getting the idea here that you don't reach across the table. I don't know where you draw the line at, how far you reach, but we kind of got scared to grab anything on the table because we were going to get stabbed. And anytime, when we came to grandma's, we would get a gift, because grandmas have to, spoil their grandkids with gifts. And so, especially, we would see them, around Thanksgiving. So she would try to give us our Christmas gift at that time when we saw her. But she would, give us this gift, and me and my brothers, we're just like wild hyenas. We just, get the gift, and we're like, just rip it open, and we're like, oh my gosh, and we just get real excited, and we're all, we start playing with it, and my dad would, stop us, like just have to grab us and stop us, like, what every parent would say to a child if they ever got something, what do you say? What do you say, right? And so, if you bring your kid, if any kid gets something and they don't say what they're supposed to say in that moment, the parent stops them right there and says, now before you do anything, you have to say what? Thank you. And so we would have to be trained to say thank you. And in those early stages, I've gotten better, but we've had to really, me and my wild brothers, we've had to be tamed over the years. But now it's funny being a parent myself, and now trying to train my little 3-year-old and my 1-year-old Levi and Evie to say thank you. And so the only way you train them is through food. Kind of like, it's hard for me not to think of it like training a dog, but I can't help it. So the one thing that gets their attention is apple pouches. And so if you don't know what that is, it's you get it at the store, a huge pack of them, and they're this little pouch, squeeze pouch that you twist the top off and apple juice, applesauce comes out. And so they love those things. And so anytime they want an apple pouch, they yell, pouch, pouch. Before we give it to them, it's, hey, what do you say? And they say, thank you, or please, or something like that. And the funny thing recently, if any of you guys know Levi, he's hilarious, but he started saying, thank you, Chad, instead of somewhere around New Year's, just recently, he started switching from thank you, Dad, to thank you, Chad. And so it's really funny and it's just cute, but now he started calling everybody Chad. So, so if you know Levi, I'm sorry if he calls you Chad. But he does say thank you, so that's okay. Today we're going to be covering in the Bible, in chapter 17 of Luke, about some folks, some guys that Jesus runs into that are kind of unaware of something that is important, missing from this situation, this story today. And they are given something and totally unaware of their response in return. So if you turn there, Luke 17, starting in verse 11, we're going to read a little bit and then we'll stop. Starting in verse 11. Now on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. And as he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, Jesus, Master, have pity on us. And when he saw them, he said, Go, show yourself to the priest. And as they went, they were cleansed. I want to pause right there and just kind of unpack that first section here to talk about what is going on in the text. Obviously, Jesus is traveling through the region. If you understand geographic of this area, he's in the northern part of the country. And he's coming through, as it says, he's on the border between Galilee and Samaria. So he's very close to this area next to Samaria. And it could be out in the country, and maybe a small village that he's coming into contact with these men. But these men have leprosy, and we've heard this word a lot. Maybe nobody's ever unpacked kind of what this, but it is a real disease that in that time it was very viewed as highly contagious. It could be they could have just lumped other skin diseases into this category of leprosy, but what this would mean is that these people would, because it was so highly contagious, and almost viewed as unclean, they would be sent out of the village or the area where most of the community lived and society, and they would live outside of society in their own little area or on their own, or most of the time they would group together. So they would have to say goodbye to friends, family, their work. They would have to also not participate in temple worship. And so they couldn't join in worship with the rest of their friends and family in the community. And one of the things to understand, they were viewed as outcasts. In some cases, it was viewed as they deserved it because of maybe of a sin that they committed or the generations past have committed. So it's a sign of something that is a punishment that they received. And so a lot of this was viewed as what was done as far as leprosy, the skin disease, was viewed as incurable. There was nothing you could do. You couldn't get close to them. Anytime that they would come into town, if they had to come into town for something, supplies, whatever it be, they had to keep a distance from everybody. They had to make it known when they walk into the town. If they shouted something to say, lepers, lepers coming through, watch out, we're lepers. It was known that they could have bells of some sort, you could hear them coming and kind of get out of their way. But they were outcast. They were viewed as, don't get near those folks. Today we know about leprosy. It's a bacteria infection, and it actually is curable. And it affects the eyes, nose, and nerves, as I understand. Symptoms include light-colored red skin patches with reduced sensation, numbness, and weakness in the hands and feet. Today, it can be cured within 6 to 12 months of multiple drug therapy. I was reading up on the WHO had said there was like 62 or 63 cases in the U.S. in 2017 or 16, which is crazy. I thought it was just not around anymore, but every now and then it will come about. But if it's also not treated, quickly enough, it's a very slow-moving bacterial disease. But if it's not taken care of, it could result in disability. And obviously, one of the cases is loss of sensation, numbness, weakness, things like that. It can be very serious. So this is kind of the picture that I'm trying to put in your head of these 10 men. They have stuck together. They've stayed. Obviously, they're together because it doesn't matter. They already have it, so they're not going to worry about getting each other infected because they already have it. But put yourself in their shoes. Imagine you've just been diagnosed with something, and you have to leave your friends and family. You have to just drop everything and say goodbye to everything that is you or was you and be forgotten, basically. That's tough. I don't think I could do that. But so as they see, somehow they must have heard that Jesus was coming into town. And so they try to get together. Hey, let's try to see if we can. I heard he's in the area. Let's try to see if he's at this town. They come into contact and they recognize it's Jesus. And so they yell out to Jesus, it says, Master, as it says, Master, Jesus, Master, have pity on us. Another version would say, have mercy on us. It's interesting that they don't just say, heal us or, they say, have pity on us. I think they're looking to draw closer to Jesus, see if he can offer anything in their favor. And so the interesting thing here in this counter, most of the time Jesus gets close to people. He comes in contact, he lays a hand on them, some sort of contact happens. But interestingly enough, that doesn't happen here. He keeps his distance and yells back to them. And what he says is pretty interesting. He says, go, show yourself to the priest. And if it was, they didn't have good hearing, like, what do you say? Go have a feast? What do you say? Go to the priest. And so what's interesting is that they went. They actually listened and obeyed, and they went, which is great. So as they went, they were healed. But here's three things to kind of understand. Why does Jesus tell them? Why didn't Jesus just heal them right there, right? You would think, why wouldn't he just do an instant heal and be done with it? There's more to the story. So, as you understand, they have this sickness, and say you were healed or you're better, you would have to go to the priest to be approved to come back into the community, because they would deem you, healthy. You were clean to come back into society to not infect anybody else. They would be the ones to approve that. And so the question, also I would add to this is, where is the priest? It doesn't define which priest or where this priest could be, because think about this, they're in the northern region. If it's the priest in Jerusalem, they're having to travel for days, 2 or 3 days to get to this priest. And the other thing is, imagine the priest that has 10 cured lepers show up to his doorstep. I mean, it's one thing if somebody comes, as a doctor, you have one person come to you that's cured of cancer. You're like, wow, this is amazing. How did this happen? But when you have 10 cases come to you all at the same time, in a sense, say they're cured of some incurable thing like cancer, you're thinking something's up. There's something going on here. And so they would want to dig in more. So understand that where, he tells them to go to the priest because he wants them to get back to their families and friends and back to worship, back to society, back to their community. The interesting thing is that, which is great, is that they go, they obey. And as they're going, they are healed. It says in verse 14, where it says, as they went, they were cleansed. So it wasn't right away, but somewhere between the journey, between meeting Jesus and getting to the priest, they come into this, they realize they're cleansed. They look down and, oh, it's gone. And the next person next to him looks over at himself and he realizes he's cleansed, and they're all cleansed. And so they are so excited. They are probably at this point practically running into town to the priest to get this over with and get back to life again. That they're no longer are they lepers. They can go home and be who they are with their friends and family. So here's where we pick up the second half. So if you're tracking with me, we're starting back in verse 14. We're going to finish it out here. So, as it says, when he saw them, he said, go, show yourself to the priest. And as they went, they were cleansed. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back, praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. He was a Samaritan. And Jesus asked, were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Was no one found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner? Then he said to him, rise and go. Your faith has made you well. Only one of the 10 men decides to stop before he gets to the priest, realizing he was healed, and goes back to Jesus. 1 out of 10. Why did he do that? Or why did the other 9 not turn around? Those are the big questions, right? And to kind of dig things into maybe someone that could be hearing this story, it was a Samaritan. And if we make the assumption maybe the 9 out of the 10 are Jews. They are Jews. And this Samaritan, this half-breed or this knockoff Jew, is the one to turn around and come back to Jesus. The foreigner, he calls him. So, the question is, what's wrong with this picture? Jesus kind of mentions, he brings to light that something is wrong. Something is missing with this picture. Something is not right. And so, we come to this idea, I think when you're reading this story for the first time, I know the word that you're thinking of in your mind right now. I have this ability where I could just read your mind. I know the word. Trust me, I know. It's ingratitude, right? Was it? Anybody would think of that word? No? Nobody. Ingratitude, it's not a word we use very much, right? But this defines what's going on in this situation. Ingratitude. I'll help you out here. If ingratitude is the opposite of gratitude, we know what gratitude means, right? Well, gratitude in the Webster dictionary, Webster wrote it, is that forgetfulness of or a poor return for kindness received. Forgetfulness of or a poor return for kindness received. And so kindness was received, and either it was forgotten or it just wasn't really returned for that favor. So imagine, this is the situation. So you have 9. Where are the 9 guys? And one of the thoughts that crossed my mind was, did Jesus only heal this 1 out of the 10 and kind of took back the healing from the 9? I mean, the text doesn't say that. The text says he healed them. But they continued to go to the priest and to go back to their lives. I mean, if you found these people, these guys, you asked them, what happened to you? Like, oh, I was healed. We found Jesus. We actually found him. And get this, he tells us to go to the priest. I thought he said go to the feast, but then we go to the priest, and we're healed on the way. Like, wow, that's amazing. Aren't you thankful for Jesus? Like, oh yeah, I'm so thankful. I'm so happy that now we're healed. I can go back to my life. But we're missing the picture here. Why does Jesus have praise for the one to come back, but not praise for the ones that were healed and didn't come back? It's this idea of gratitude. It's more than just a feeling, right? As I'm getting it, one of the Samaritans he expressed gratitude back to Jesus, if you catch that. He expressed it and did it. The other ones might have just felt it. But they're totally unaware. They're totally forgetful of what needed to happen here. And so to be grateful is more than just a feeling. And I think I've been guilty of this. But it's more of an expressive action is what gratitude is. So as we continue to kind of look at this idea here, my main point I want to pull out of this, and it's in your handout if you like to take notes, is unexpressed gratitude expresses ingratitude. Something to help you remember as you walk away. Unexpressed gratitude expresses ingratitude. So the Samaritan, Jesus tells the Samaritan, he tells him, rise and go, your faith has made you well. And so what is different about this man, the Samaritan, versus the 9? I mean, both, if you look at, they're all healed of the same thing. But what is different about this Samaritan that's more? He completes the circle. He finishes what needs to be finished. He shows gratitude. And so unexpressed gratitude expresses ingratitude. It closes the loop. Gratitude closes the loop of what has happened. It's more than just what's on the surface. Gratitude humbly recognizes where we would have been without that gift, or without what God has done in our life, or maybe what people have done to support us and lift us up. As we remember, Webster Dictionary says, forgetful and poor on return. Jesus wasn't demanding a return. He was giving a gift without giving them the option for how they would respond. I think I'm pretty guilty of this sometimes, maybe you, that we tend to treat God like a vending machine, is the way I look at it. We come, we get what we want from God. We come with legitimate cares and issues and problems that really are a problem in our life. And maybe he provides. He always provides, whether it's the way you think it's going to happen or not. He does provide. He blesses. But a lot of times if we get what we want, I tend to go back to what I was doing. I go back to my way until I need him again. I come back to him as a vending machine. I get the idea that millions of us probably do this. And I know we're guilty of it. I look at what Nick was going through the sermon, I remember on Luke 15, talking about the wayward son. I couldn't help but think about this analogy, that here this son just takes all the inheritance, basically wishes his dad dead, and takes the inheritance and goes on his way to do what he wants. Until he realizes he runs out, and then he comes back. But he still loves him. The father still takes him in. And ingratitude, the wayward son had ingratitude because it was out of his mind to even think about what he was doing in that moment. The father provided, but he had no appreciation, no gratitude for his father. I had been gone for past 2 weeks, if anybody knows, I was taking a class for our seminary course. It was a January 2-week intensive course, amazing class on addiction. It was an elective, a counseling class. It was very eye-opening to me. If you have people in your family or you know of folks that have dealt with addiction, and you can fill in the blank what that is, it could be substance abuse, behavioral addiction. What I'm learning, from this class was that addiction is way beyond just, what we typically think, right? Drug use or alcohol use or whatever it be. It's way deeper than that. And I had the privilege of attending an AA meeting and a Celebrate Recovery meeting, just kind of observe and learn a little bit of what life is like for these folks. And one of the things we pulled away from this observations and in class discussing is that these people are powerless. They're hopeless. They think and they really want to try to beat this. They see the destruction it has in their life, their family, their jobs, their health. I mean, they would rather, it's to the point where they would rather die taking this thing that they're addicted to more than their life, more than eating, drinking. They could know that it's bad. They know it's bad, but they cannot stop. And it's very powerless for some of the extreme cases. And as I'm watching this, I can't help but think of this situation where we're talking about here today with the 10 lepers. Here are folks that have no way to cure themselves. They have no way to step out of this problem that they can't get away from. And Jesus is the only one to step in and change that. And one of the great things about AA and Celebrate Recovery especially is that the first thing they kind of get to the front end of this is that you cannot get better. You're powerless. But God can help you through this. And so it's a surrender to give up and trying to do it on your own and giving it over to God. Especially in Celebrate Recovery, it's very focused on Christ to take that. And so I want to tell you a quick story here we've had to read the Blue Book. It's called AA's Big Book. There's great testimonies in there. And what they're getting at is as you go through the 12 steps, you go through the process of surrendering, giving into God, and allowing Him to change you in ways that you cannot understand. You start to change, you start to grow. And a lot of these folks get to a point where they start to actually see reality for what it really was. As we're going back to, ingratitude is not seeing the reality of what your life is. And you're totally unaware. But as they come out of this phase, this fog, or this haze of addiction, they start to see reality. And there's a story I kept thinking about was this story of the empty on the inside was the name of this testimony of this one lady. She was practically, she was losing her kids, divorce. I mean, she was deeply stuck in alcohol addiction. And so I want to read this to kind of close this out here today to get the idea of seeing more than just ourselves. So it says, the second night I sat in what I call the new God chair. Second row against the wall. If you sit in it, sit in the back, everybody knows that you're new. If you sit in the front, you might have to talk to someone. So when it came time to hold hands and pray at the end of the meeting, I had no hand to hold on one side. I remember thinking, I will never fit in here. And hanging my head, I felt my hand being taken. Someone in front of me had taken the time to be sure that the circle was complete. To this day, I don't know who it was. But that person is the reason I came back the next night. And that person saved my life. And I kept coming back. When I was later in her story, she says this. Later, when I was 2 weeks sober, a man's 9-year-old daughter was killed by a drunk driver. 3 days later, he was at the meeting, saying he had to believe it wasn't for nothing, that maybe one alcoholic would be sober because of it. I left that day and I found myself wondering, what would have happened if that had been my kids or me? What would they remember about me? A feeling came over me. I know now it was gratitude. And I realized that I could call my children right then and tell them I loved them. That I could show up when I said I would. And that my word could be worth something to them. That even though I might always just be mom who comes over on the weekends, I could be a good weekend mom. I had a chance to move forward with them, forging a relationship built on a foundation on God and Alcoholics Anonymous, rather than always trying to make up for the past. One year later, I was able to share with that man that maybe it hadn't been for nothing, because my life was changed that day. Unexpressed gratitude expresses ingratitude. So I challenge you guys today in the story that first, stop whatever you're doing today. Not tomorrow, even after you get out of here, however you do it, show gratitude to God. Because ultimately, you would not be here if it wasn't for him. And the things that he's done for you is incomprehensible. So stop and thank God. The second thing is, I would challenge you today to show gratitude to someone in your life. I have it in your notes. Who in your life, I forget how I wrote it, but who do you take for granted in your life? However you want to answer that question in your mind, who that person could be. Maybe it could be a person you could show more gratitude for. Whoever that person is, I really do challenge you. This is strictly for you. It will help you more than you can ever realize. Just like the 1 out of the 10, he was healed deeper than just skin. It was in the heart. And I pray that you write that person down. You don't have to write it down, but think of that person and go to that person. Write them a letter. I challenge you to express in action gratitude to this person, whoever that could be. I think it will do amazing dividends for you and for that person that maybe now you're aware of that. So I challenge you. I really hope you do that today, not tomorrow. I want to pray for you in that challenge, because I know it's not easy. I can stand up here and tell you to go do these things, but I understand in my own life that that's not easy. And so I want to pray for you guys, and as we close out, we'll be singing a hymn, and we'll close out today. Father, we lift up today, we lift up your word, and we pray it roots itself in our life. God, that we just don't know about gratitude, that we just don't know about your love, but we show it and we express it. May the love we have for you and the others around us be more than just a feeling, but be an expression, an action in our community, in our families, our workplaces, and here in our church. I challenge these folks here, God, but I know that they can't do it on their own. May you walk with them and hold their hand through it, encourage them to not come up with excuses, but to do it. I challenge myself in that, God, and may you challenge us all. And thank you for your word. Thank you for your son to step into our life and to heal us when we couldn't heal ourselves. And so in your name, amen.